The remains of the ancient vessel had lain dormant for millennia, buried beneath the rusty soil of Nova. In the post-Scout Galaxy era of 2387, humanity had spread its reach across the stars, establishing outposts on distant worlds. Yet, for all their technological prowess, they were still blind to their true origins. Discovery Base Nova floated in a limbo of space and time, perched on the edge of a desolate planet rich with fossilized technology. The research station buzzed with the excitement of archaeological breakthroughs and the tension of military oversight. At the heart of this scientific endeavor stood Dr. Lin, her eyes reflecting the holographic displays of neural patterns that danced before her. "Another anomaly in the readings," she muttered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. As a neural biologist specializing in host-parasite interactions, she had been recruited to study the strange artifacts unearthed from the planet's core. But after 6 months of research, the military commanders were growing impatient with the lack of tangible results. "The colonel wants an update by tomorrow morning," said Dr. Hung, his voice cutting through her concentration. He stood at the entrance to her lab, arms crossed, his posture betraying his skepticism of her methods. "Something more substantial than interesting neural signatures." "Lin." She nodded without looking up. "Tell Colonel Nam I'll have something for him. Mai is helping me map the subterranean chambers. We believe there's an untouched section beneath the primary excavation site. Just be careful. We've already lost 2 researchers to cave-ins." Hung's voice softened slightly, revealing a concern that transcended their professional rivalry. The military doesn't care about casualties as long as they get their weapons technology. Once he left, Lin let out a deep sigh. Her colleague wasn't wrong. Colonel Nam's interest in the alien artifacts was purely strategic. But Lin's fascination went beyond military applications. The neural patterns embedded in the artifacts suggested a form of consciousness transfer, a technology that could revolutionize their understanding of the mind itself. When Mai arrived at her lab later that evening, her excitement was palpable. "You need to see this," the young technician said, projecting a 3-dimensional map onto the central display. "We found a sealed chamber approximately 50 meters below the current excavation. The energy signatures are unlike anything we've recorded before." "Active signatures?" Lin's pulse quickened. "Fluctuating, but yes, active. Whatever's down there, it's not just a fossil." By midnight, Lin had assembled a small team and obtained reluctant permission from Colonel Nam to investigate the new chamber. The descent through the narrow passageways of the alien structure was claustrophobic, the air thick with the scent of mineral deposits and the lingering smell of excavation chemicals. "The readings are getting stronger," Mai whispered, her handheld scanner emitting a soft, rhythmic pulse. "It's almost like a heartbeat." The chamber they eventually breached was small, hardly larger than Lin's lab, but its walls pulsated with a bioluminescent glow that shifted in response to their presence. In the center, suspended in a transparent casing, lay an oval-shaped organism. Its surface rippled like liquid metal, patterns of light dancing across its form. "Is it alive?" one of the security officers asked, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. "More than alive." Lin breathed, approaching the case cautiously. "It's responsive. Look how the patterns change when I move closer." She placed her hand against the casing, and the organism inside surged toward her touch. "Doctor, I strongly advise against direct contact," Mai warned, but Lin was already examining the mechanism that sealed the case. "This isn't just an organism," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "It's a symbiote, a being designed to bond with a host. The neural patterns we've been studying, they must be memories, transferred from host to host over generations. All the more reason not to touch it," The security officer insisted, but Lin had spent her career studying such interactions, the delicate dance between host and parasite, the exchange of nutrients, information, sometimes even consciousness. And here was the ultimate expression of that relationship, a being that had survived eons, waiting for a new host. "I need to understand it," she said, simply. Before anyone could stop her, she had released the seal on the casing. The symbiote surged upward, a liquid column that twisted in the air before latching onto her outstretched hand. Mai's scream echoed through the chamber as the security officers raised their weapons. But Lin remained still, her eyes wide as the organism flowed up her arm, across her shoulder, and finally wrapped around her neck like a living collar. "I'm fine," she assured them, though her voice trembled slightly. "It's not aggressive. It's communicating." The journey back to the surface was tense, with Mai constantly monitoring Lin's vital signs and the security team keeping their distance. By the time they reached the base, word of the incident had spread, and Dr. Hung was waiting for them, his face a mask of fury and concern. "Have you lost your mind?" he demanded, ordering immediate quarantine procedures. "That thing could be poisoning you as we speak." "It's not," Lin insisted, though she allowed herself to be placed in the isolation chamber. "It's trying to share something with me. Information, memories." The next 24 hours were a blur of medical tests and interrogations. Colonel Nam wanted the symbiote removed immediately, by force if necessary. But Hung, despite his anger, advocated for caution. Forcible removal might kill Lin or damage the organism, losing whatever knowledge it possessed. In the quiet moments between examinations, Lin began to experience the first visions, flashes of a civilization that had mastered the stars long before humans had discovered fire. She saw vast cities that floated in the atmospheres of gas giants, beings of light and energy that communicated through thought alone, and terrible wars that consumed entire solar systems. They weren't just visitors to Earth, she told Hung when he came to check on her. They were our architects. "You're hallucinating," he replied gently. "The organism is affecting your brain chemistry. We need to remove it before the changes become permanent." But the visions continued, growing more coherent as the symbiote established deeper connections with her neural pathways. She saw Earth as it had been billions of years ago, a barren rock transformed by deliberate seeding of microorganisms, the careful introduction of complex life forms, and finally, the genetic engineering of early hominids. "We're their children," she whispered to Mai, who had been assigned to monitor her condition. "Not just influenced by them, created by them. They left Earth before our recorded history, but they left markers, guides embedded in our DNA." "Lin, you've been infected by an alien parasite," Mai said, her voice breaking with concern. "Of course it wants you to believe it's benevolent. That's how parasites work. They manipulate their hosts." But Lin knew this was different. The symbiote wasn't controlling her, it was sharing with her, offering glimpses of a collective memory that spanned millennia. And with each new vision, she became more convinced of its importance. On the third day, Colonel Nam's patience ran out. "We're removing the organism tomorrow," he informed her during his inspection. "The surgical team is prepping now." "You can't," Lin protested, sitting up despite the weakness that had begun to plague her. "I'm learning too much. The symbiote is showing me coordinates, locations of other artifacts, repositories of knowledge left across the galaxy, including something they call the water matrix, the original DNA source for humanity. And if finding these repositories means allowing that thing to consume you completely?" the colonel asked coldly. "Dr. Hung tells me your brain activity is changing. Parts of your memory are being overwritten. Lin hadn't known this, and for the first time, a flicker of fear broke through her fascination. Was she losing herself? Were her own memories being replaced by those of the symbiote? She tried to recall her childhood home, her parents' faces, her first day at the academy, and found the images strangely blurred, as if viewed through frosted glass. That night, as she lay in the isolation chamber fighting against a growing fever, Hung came to see her alone. His face was haggard with lack of sleep, his usual neat appearance disheveled. "I've been studying the data from your neural scans," he said without preamble. "The symbiote isn't just sharing memories, it's rewriting your neural architecture. At the current rate of progression, within a week, you won't be Lin anymore." But the knowledge, she argued weakly, what it's showing me, it changes everything we think we know about human origins. At the cost of your identity, yourself? Hung leaned closer. "Lin, I know we've had our differences, but I respect you as a scientist and as a person. Don't throw yourself away for this." She turned away from his concern, unable to articulate the wonder she felt each time the symbiote shared a new memory. How could she explain that in those moments? She experienced a connection to something vast and ancient, a sense of purpose that transcended individual identity. "I need more time," she whispered. "Just a few more days." Hung stood, his expression unreadable. "The procedure is scheduled for IRSISO 800 hours. I'll do everything I can to preserve your brain function." He paused at the door. "But Lin, if you're still in there tomorrow, fight to remember who you are. Don't let it take everything." After he left, Lin closed her eyes and reached out to the symbiote with her thoughts. "Show me more about the water matrix. Show me where it is." The response was immediate, a flood of images more intense than any before. She saw a massive spacecraft, a living vessel that had carried the original genetic templates across the galaxy. She saw it landing on a blue-green planet circling a binary star, the precious cargo stored in crystalline structures deep beneath the surface. And she saw a map, stellar coordinates that burned into her consciousness. But the intensity of the vision was too much. Pain lanced through her skull as her neural pathways struggled to process the alien memories. She screamed, convulsing on the bed as alarms blared throughout the medical bay. Medical staff rushed in, Hung among them, his face pale with fear. "She's seizing! Get the neural stabilizers!" Through the haze of pain, Lin felt something else, the symbiote's own fear. Not fear of discovery or destruction, but fear of failing its purpose. It had waited millennia for a compatible host, someone who could understand and transmit its knowledge. And now, in its eagerness, it was killing her. "Too much," she gasped between spasms. "Too fast." As the medical team worked frantically to stabilize her, Lin felt herself slipping away, her consciousness fragmenting into shards of memory, some hers, some belonging to the ancient beings who had crafted humanity in their image, in that liminal space between identities. She made a desperate plea. "Not like this. We need balance, partnership, not consumption." The symbiote responded, its patterns shifting across her skin as it adjusted its integration. The pain began to recede, replaced by a strange clarity. When she opened her eyes, the medical staff stood frozen, watching as the iridescent patterns flowed across her visible skin before settling into a barely perceptible shimmer. "Lin?" Hung asked cautiously. "Are you still you?" She considered the question carefully, taking inventory of her memories, her sense of self. "Yes," she finally replied, "but I'm also more. We've reached an understanding." Over the next several hours, Hung and Mai ran tests while Colonel Nam observed from behind the isolation glass. The symbiote had indeed altered Lin's neural structure, but instead of overwriting her personality, it had created a parallel system, a repository for its vast memories that Lin could access without losing herself. "It's remarkable," Hung admitted as he reviewed the scans. "Your brain has developed new neural pathways, almost like having a second cognitive framework operating alongside your original consciousness." "That was its intention all along," Lin explained. "Not to consume, but to share. The previous hosts must have been incompatible. Their neural structures couldn't adapt quickly enough." "And now?" Colonel Nam asked, speaking through the intercom. "What does it want from you?" Lin met his gaze steadily. "To help us remember, to show us who we really are and where we came from." The colonel was skeptical, but the potential value of the information the symbiote possessed was too great to ignore. The surgical removal was postponed, conditional on Lin maintaining her own identity and sharing any militarily valuable information. In the weeks that followed, Lin worked with Hung and Mai to document the symbiote's memories. They learned of an ancient race that had seeded compatible planets with life, guiding evolution toward intelligence. Earth had been one of their most successful projects, but a cataclysmic war had forced them to abandon their experiments across the galaxy. They left markers, Lin explained during one briefing session, genetic triggers embedded in our DNA that would eventually lead us back to them, or at least to the repositories of knowledge they left behind. "Like cosmic breadcrumbs," Mai suggested. "Exactly. And the most important of these repositories is the water matrix, the original genetic template from which humanity was crafted. According to the symbiote's memories, it contains not just our past, but potential evolutionary paths we might take in the future." Colonel Nam, ever practical, was more interested in the technology these ancient beings had possessed. "Can your symbiote provide weapon schematics, faster-than-light travel improvements, anything with immediate tactical applications?" Lin shook her head. "It doesn't work that way. The memories aren't encyclopedic, they're experiential. I see and feel what hosts from the past experienced. The technological details are impressionistic." This wasn't entirely true. The symbiote had shown her glimpses of terrible weapons that had destroyed entire civilizations. But Lin had made a choice not to share this knowledge, recognizing the danger it posed in the hands of military forces motivated by territorial expansion. Hung seemed to sense her omission. Later, when they were alone in the lab, he confronted her. "You're hiding something from Nam." She didn't deny it. "Some knowledge isn't ready to be shared, not until we mature as a species." "And who decides when we're ready? You and your symbiote?" His tone was challenging, but there was uncertainty in his eyes. "Lin, I want to trust you, but how can I be sure it's still you making these decisions?" It was a fair question, one she had asked herself during quiet moments of reflection. The boundary between her thoughts and the symbiote's influence wasn't always clear. Sometimes she found herself considering problems from perspectives that felt alien, viewing human conflicts with a detachment that bordered on indifference. "I'm still me," she said after a long pause, "but I've seen the rise and fall of civilizations far more advanced than ours. I've witnessed species annihilate themselves with technologies they weren't prepared to control. I won't be responsible for humanity following the same path." Hung studied her face, searching for signs of the colleague and rival he had known. "Then help us follow a different path. Show us enough to move forward, not enough to destroy ourselves." It was a compromise she could accept. Over the following months, Lin shared carefully selected information, advances in sustainable energy, medical techniques that could extend human lifespans, and most importantly, the stellar coordinates of the water matrix. The revelation that humanity had been engineered by an advanced alien species was met with predictable reactions: denial from religious institutions, excitement from the scientific community, and strategic calculations from military leaders. But as the evidence mounted, genetic markers that couldn't be explained by natural evolution, archaeological discoveries that aligned with the symbiote's memories, acceptance slowly grew. A year after her initial bonding with the symbiote, Lynn stood in the observation dome of the Discovery base, gazing up at the stars. The expedition to the water matrix was being prepared, with both Hung and herself assigned as lead researchers. Colonel Nam had fought to maintain military control of the mission, but the United Galactic Alliance had intervened, declaring it a scientific endeavor of species-wide importance. "Do you ever regret it?" Mai asked, joining her at the viewport. "Bonding with the symbiote. I mean..." Lynn considered the question. The symbiote had become so integrated with her consciousness that imagining life without it was difficult. She had lost some things. Certain memories from her early life had faded, and she sometimes felt disconnected from purely human concerns. But she had gained so much more: a perspective that spanned eons, an understanding of humanity's place in a vast cosmic tapestry. "No," she finally answered. "It was frightening at first, feeling my identity shift and expand, but now I understand what we can become if we embrace our true heritage. A heritage of being someone else's experiment." Mai sounded troubled. "A heritage of being part of something greater." Lynn corrected gently. "The beings who created us didn't see us as mere experiments. They saw us as their legacy, children who might one day surpass them." On the other side of the dome, Hung was deep in conversation with the mission specialists, his gestures animated as he explained some technical aspect of the journey. He had become her most unexpected ally, balancing her cosmic perspective with pragmatic human concerns. Together, they had crafted a framework for sharing the symbiote's knowledge that minimized disruption while maximizing benefit. "Will we find them?" Mai asked. "The creators, I mean, are they still out there somewhere?" Lynn felt the symbiote stir within her mind, its thoughts brushing against hers like a gentle current. "I don't know," she admitted. "The memories I've accessed don't show their fate after they left our region of space, but finding the water matrix is the first step toward answering that question." As the stars wheeled slowly overhead, Lynn felt a profound sense of purpose. She had opened a door to humanity's true history, challenging them to see themselves as more than accidents of evolution on an insignificant planet. Whether they were ready for this knowledge remained to be seen, but the journey had begun. In the depths of space, ancient markers waited to guide them home to their cosmic origins, and within Lynn, the symbiote pulsed with anticipation, its purpose finally fulfilled after countless millennia of patient waiting. Together, they had become a bridge between past and future, between what humanity had been engineered to be and what they might choose to become. The symbiote shared one final memory as Lynn gazed at the stars, a vision of Earth as seen from orbit thousands of years ago, when the creators had departed. In that moment, looking down at the blue-green jewel that would nurture their greatest creation, they had felt not the cold calculation of scientists, but the bittersweet pride of parents watching their children take their first independent steps. "We were loved," Lynn whispered, a single tear tracking down her cheek. And that, perhaps, was the most profound revelation of all.